Hey people, this is Ron. I am just putting together this little audio because there's some things on my heart that I just felt like I wanted to share with you. This is for a small group of people that I just want to communicate to all at one time because you are people that I trust, people that I very much care about. I know for sure that I plan to share this audio with Pastor Roger. I plan to share it with my best friend, Les. I plan to share it with my sisters, Dee Dee and Ellen, and their family, nieces and nephews, and folks like that. I don't plan on just sharing it with everyone. The reason why I want to share it with you guys is because not only are you all people that I trust, people who have been in my life, who know me very, very well, who know my personality, who know, where I'm coming from. Also, you are people who I know are God's people, that you belong to Him. All of you have callings on your lives that I'm able to see and recognize and know that God is at work in your lives, and that you understand that you have a place and a responsibility within the body of Christ. So because of all those factors, because you are people that I know and love and trust, and because I know that you are also members of the body of Christ, co-workers in God's kingdom, that's why I'm sharing this with you. So there's just a couple of things that I want to say. Two things. The first thing is I just wanted to talk about what's going on with this COVID-19 virus and what Tiffany and I have been feeling about it. It's a pretty unpopular stance. So it's something that you may not agree with us on. But I just wanted to put it out there as kind of like a coming out of the closet moment. Sometimes when you hold a view that's much less popular than other people have, or that you think maybe other people, most people that you know might think a certain way, and you think something different. It's almost that feeling like you're in the closet and you don't really want to say how you really feel or what you really think. And it begins to put a strain on your relationship because you don't really want to say what you think, because you feel like you're going to get shot down, or you think somebody's going to look at you funny. So I just kind of want to put it out there what our family, what we're thinking about this. And this is really myself, Tiff, and our kids. So that's the first part. Let's talk about the COVID-19. The second part is specifically something that's really powerful on my heart right now, which is the response of the church, of the capital C church, to what's going on with the government response to this virus and the different lockdowns and social distancing measures that are being put into play that I personally believe are disproportionately affecting the work of the church. So the first thing I just wanted to talk about is the COVID-19 virus itself. When this first came on the scene, I think I kind of started becoming aware of it sometime in mid-January. I'm pretty good at kind of following the news. I like to look at a lot of different sources. I do not trust the news. I'll just say that right off the bat, and I'll explain to you why in just a moment, why I don't trust the news. I don't trust the media, but I do the best I can to try to glean however much information I can glean from the media to form my own opinions, my own thoughts, and what I think about what's going on. I am a data person. In my secular job, I have been doing data work for the past 22 years. So that's what I do. I process data, I analyze data, I look at data, I consider data, and I make sense out of data. And when data does not make sense, it's been my job for the past 22 years to help whatever company I'm working for figure out what's wrong when the data doesn't add up, when the data doesn't make sense, for our alarm bells to go off and for the red flags to go up and say something's not right here, something's not adding up, because the data that's being provided or given or that we are collecting does not jive with what we're doing. So in most cases, companies want to get better at doing whatever it is that they do based upon the data. But you can also have situations where, based upon the data, some people would like for people to believe things that are contrary to what the data is actually telling them. So in some cases, the data is actually staring them in the face saying this is what the truth is. But you have companies who actually want people to believe something other than what the data is telling them. And that's been my experience as well. So when this first came about, and particularly as time went on, a few weeks went by, and they put in the social distancing measures, they started telling us, no school, stay at home, don't go to work. And then all those things began to become more and more and more stringent, to where essentially we are at a place in our collective society across the country where we are essentially being told that we need to stay in the house. And they're not calling it martial law. They are not, wanting to use certain verbiage and certain terminology to describe what actually, in my opinion, is martial law. But what Tiff and I noticed, like right when this thing was first kicking off, our spiritual antenna just went up immediately when this first started, even before the stay-at-home orders were put into place. When they very first started talking about social distancing, the first thing that I said to Tiff and to our kids, particularly after Michaela ended up having to come home from college, it was time for her spring break, and she came home, and by that time we knew that she wasn't going to be able to go back to school. And we were actually concerned about her, not being able to come home at all, because they were starting to implement travel restrictions and things of that nature. So we were getting pretty concerned about it. And by the time Michaela came home and we started having discussions within our family, Tiffany and I already were very, very, very troubled in our spirit, because just from a data standpoint, when I was looking at the data and they were telling us, if we don't do X, Y, and Z with these social distancing measures, and everybody stay home, and everybody give up your job, we don't care how bad of a toothache you have and you've been waiting to go to the dentist for 3 weeks and you finally got your appointment, you can't go to the dentist anymore. Just keep your toothache. Your kids can't go to school. I can say for a fact, being a teacher at a school now, teaching computer science, that all of us as teachers, people are commending teachers and saying, you guys are doing a great job. You're doing the best you can. But we all understand that our students are by no means, no way, no shape, no form getting even close to the level of a proper education that they should be getting if they were able to go to school. So they're saying, hey, you got to give up your kids' education. You got to give up all these things. You're going to lose your jobs. We know that's happening. We know that when this started, there were 3 million people unemployed who were looking for work. Now there's 11 million people unemployed. They said you got to give up your job, give up your work, give up everything, stay in the house, don't go anywhere, don't move, just stay. And the first thing that I said to my family was, when this first started, even before Michaela got home, but we talked about it a lot more after she got home, I said, I'm a data person. And I said, I'm looking at the data, not what Fox News is telling me about the data and not what CNN is telling me about the data, but I'm looking at the data myself as a data professional, and what I'm seeing and what they're saying does not match. And what they're asking us to do is not in alignment or proportional to what is actually going on. So I do want to stop and say that I do believe that the coronavirus exists. I'm not one of those people who doesn't believe that there's anything out there. I do believe that there is a new strain of coronavirus out there that we are calling COVID-19. And that it's making people sick. But the numbers have never, ever borne out the idea that this virus is anywhere to the degree that people have been telling us that it is, in order to warrant us doing what they have been asking us to do. And that's becoming more and more obvious. There's a person that I've looked at in the past, and I came back across them because I was doing some research on my own. And when all of these red flags started going up for me, wondering why they are asking everyone to stay home, don't go anywhere, don't be together. All of us know that literally to limit human contact with one another is really bad for you. You may or may not know this. I think most of you probably do. Literally, babies can die if they don't get touched, because human contact is so important. They did experiments in the past where they took children newborn babies, and just fed them enough to make sure that they were nourished, but never held them, never talked to them, never gave them baby talk, never held them in their arms, never, rocked them to sleep. All they did was only give them enough milk to drink that they knew was enough milk, and, enough sustenance, but no physical contact. And those babies did very, very poorly. A lot of them deteriorated very quickly physically, and many of them died because human contact is necessary. So when they're telling us no human contact, no interaction with anybody, outside of your immediate family, stay in your house, don't go anywhere, don't move, then I'm thinking, okay, I'm willing to do that if I look at the data and we're really on pace for 1 million people to die. We're really on pace for 2 million people to die. Then, okay, maybe that makes sense to me. But when I'm looking at the data does not bear out that this new virus, we've had new viruses before, novel viruses that are new on the scene. It's a new strain. We've never seen this strain before, whatever the origin is, whatever, whether it came from China, they cooked it up, in some lab or somewhere, wherever. But it's a new flu strain, and we've had new flu strains. And when these new flu strains come out, people get the flu. If you take a flu shot and this flu shot doesn't cover this new kind of flu, then you might get sick. And unfortunately, when the flu comes out, when it's flu season, a lot of older people whose immune systems are not as strong as they used to be, or a lot of people with underlying conditions whose immune systems are not as strong as others. Unfortunately, some people die during flu seasons. And I never knew that prior to 3 or 4 years ago. And a woman suggested to me that I get a flu shot, someone at work. And I told her, no, I don't take a flu shot, because the one time that I took a flu shot, Tiff and I both got flu shots one year. It's a long time ago, like in the early 2000s or something. I think Michaela was a baby. And that year that we both got the flu shot, we both got so sick. I don't know if we got sick from the flu shot or the flu shot just didn't work, but both of us had like the worst flu we ever had in our life. On the toilet, diarrhea, vomiting, fever, all that stuff. And so I figured I'm not taking another flu shot, because either the flu shot made me sick or it didn't help. So, I'll take a pass on the flu shot. So I told her I don't want the flu shot. And she was like, okay, but I'm just letting you know this is a really bad flu year. So, just think about it. And I said, okay. But she made me curious, and she told me, you can die from the flu. And I said, really? I said, I never really known people to die from the flu. She was like, yeah, a lot of people die from the flu every year. So that made me interested in the data. So I went and I looked up the data. I went to the CDC, to the Center for Disease Control, and I started looking up information. And I found out, this is a few years ago, like I said, and I started looking at the flu data and found out that every single year during flu season, which is between like mid-November to early March, between 30 and 40 million people get the flu every single year. And I never knew that. Like, wow, that many people get the flu. And then right there, it said that an average of 45 million people a year die from the flu. And I had no idea that 45 million people, I'm sorry, I said 45 million, I mean 45,000 people every year die from the flu. And I did not know that. And I'm like, wow, 45,000 people die from the flu on average every single year. And so that was very interesting to me. I didn't know that many lives were lost from the flu. But because I knew that 45,000 people per year died from the flu. So when they started saying, here's the coronavirus, here's the totals, is here now, and we have to huddle up, and we have to stay home, and we can't move, and we can't leave the house. And so I started looking at the numbers, and they're giving this running total. Oh, it's up to 1,000 people now. Oh my goodness, it doubled in the last 3 days, and now it's up to 3,500 people. And now, wow, now we're up to 7,000 people. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, all these people are losing their jobs. All these people are no longer able to do the things that they were doing. None of our kids are being educated properly. I know that for a fact from being in the school system. And my students personally, I know that they are not doing as well as they would be doing if they were in school. So all of our kids are having their education suffer. Businesses are going out of business. Small businesses are going out of business. One of Tiffany's students, she's teaching math at the community college down the street at South Piedmont Community College. She's got students who are taking her class and then working on the side. She's got one particular young lady who has 3 kids, and she's working as a waitress, and she lost her job. And she's telling Tiff, I don't know what I'm going to do. I got 3 kids. I can't work because my place is out of business. And even if it wasn't, I'm not allowed to go to work. So I'm thinking to myself, all right, I don't want the death toll to go up to 300,000 or 400,000 or 500,000. I don't want that to happen. But unless that does happen, I'm going to start getting upset that they're shutting everything down for numbers that aren't going to be any greater than the flu numbers that we get every last single year. So this data is not adding up. What I'm seeing in the data and the response to this is not making sense to me. And that's the way I felt. And that's the way Tiff felt. And I know a lot of people did not feel that way in terms of feeling like this, this virus was as serious as what they were saying. Again, I know people have gotten it. I know people have gotten very sick. I know a certain percentage of the people have died. Also, what I do know from being a data person, and I get interested in this stuff and I start looking stuff up on my own, not looking up, I saw somebody's YouTube video and that made me, start thinking how they think. That's not the way I operate personally. I look up data for myself because I think for myself. And then I might find somebody else who's saying something that's already agreeing with what I'm thinking. And I'll go, okay, somebody else is thinking the same way I'm thinking, but I'm not thinking the way I think because they think it. I'm thinking the way I think because I think it. And then I see that somebody else is thinking the same thing. You follow me? So I'm looking at this data and I'm like, okay, by the time I crunch all these numbers down and I literally get my calculator out, I pull my calculator up on my computer and I'm doing calculations and I'm realizing that the number of people who actually are dying from COVID-19, and let me also add something in here as well real quick. About a month ago, if you were paying attention to the news, which I'm going to talk about that in a second. But if you were paying attention, even if you went directly to the CDC website, you would find that anybody that they tested positive for COVID-19, if they die of anything, but if they have tested positive for COVID-19, they list the cause of death as COVID-19. I don't know if you knew that. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But that is a direct mandate from the CDC. You can look it up. If I go in and if I get tested for COVID-19 and I have COVID-19, I might, most people who have gotten the COVID-19 virus have recovered. The vast majority of people who have gotten it have recovered just fine. But if I got tested for COVID-19 and they said, hey, Ron Broom, you're positive, but I went out, they said, you can go back home. And then I went out, was working in the backyard because I'm fat and I'm overweight. And if I have a heart attack and die and they take me to the hospital, they say, oh, he tested positive for COVID-19. That's going to be listed as his cause of death. So that's exactly what they're doing. And they're open about it. They're saying put COVID-19 down as a cause of death if somebody has COVID-19, regardless of how they died. So when you see those numbers, then also realize that they're a little bit higher because of that reason as well. But I'm thinking, okay, I need to start seeing these numbers go up a lot faster to justify what's going on with this lockdown. And I'm never seeing it. So finally, what they began to say was, well, if we didn't do all of this social distancing, then the numbers would have been 1 million. The numbers would have been 2 million if we didn't do all these things that we have been doing. And I'm just saying to you, as my family and my friends, that I don't believe that at all. I think that's completely bogus. I really do. If you look and just kind of look at the whole situation logically, again, I've seen a lot of people now who are saying some of the same things that I'm saying. And I'm not saying what I'm saying because I heard them say what they say. But it's just a lot of people who are thinking the same things because it's kind of common sense. But one of the things they said was, look at the difference between what's going on in New York and what's going on in California. The death toll in New York is so high because even though New York, with New York City and that whole state, it's, you know, it's such a populous state and such a populous city. And you have so many, you know, foreigners who come in, you know, through New York, and so many people in New York, that it was really necessary for them to go into lockdown earlier than what they chose to, because the numbers in California, the death toll numbers are so much lower than they are in New York. And it's because literally, this is what they said, is because California started putting into place lockdown measures 3 days earlier than New York did. And so these doctors are saying it is because just literally 3 days worth of lockdown. If New York would have locked down 3 days earlier, they could be like California and not have such a high death toll, because these social distancing measures are so powerful and so effective that those 3 days difference between California and New York show the difference between how many people died in California and how many people died in New York. But me and my Ron Broom logical mind and Tiffany Broom and her logical mind, we were thinking about it and we're like, okay, so what about places like Florida, where California went on lockdown? 3 days later, New York went on lockdown. And then it wasn't until almost 3 weeks after New York went on lockdown that Florida finally went on lockdown. And the governor down there, Governor DeSantis, still didn't want to go on lockdown, but he got pressured into going on lockdown because they were making him feel stank because he wasn't locking down his state. And the politically correct thing to do was to lock the state down. And he was being too resistant. So they finally made him feel ashamed. And he finally said, okay, I'll lock down the state. He locked down his state 3 weeks after. But the death toll in Florida, they have big cities too. They have Miami, they have Tampa, they have Orlando. It's a very big, port state where a lot of people come in and out of that state. And their death toll is much lower than New York and even California. So if the 3 days earlier that California locked down before New York did, if that's what makes all the difference, this lockdown makes all the difference, then why isn't Florida far worse than New York and California if they didn't lock down until 3 weeks later? It's a very big populous state with big cities. And they haven't been doing too bad relative to other states with big cities. They've done pretty well in terms of having cities that big. So I don't think it's the lockdown. Logically, that just doesn't follow. What I do think is going on with the lockdown is this. You might want to just do some quick research on this guy named Edward Bernays. Edward Bernays is a man, he was born in 1894 and he didn't die until 1995. So he was 101 years old. And even though you might not be familiar with his name, but you are very familiar with his work, because Edward Bernays was the nephew of the famous psychologist Sigmund Freud. I know all of us have heard of Sigmund Freud. Edward Bernays was his nephew, and Edward Bernays was actually very close to his uncle. So he followed in the footsteps of his uncle, studied psychology, learned at the feet of his uncle. But what he did was he took his uncle's work and his uncle's understanding of psychology and his uncle's understanding of how people operate mentally, and he took it to another level. And Edward Bernays actually he created the phrase. It was his idea that came out of his mind, the phrase that you hear all the time, which is public relations. That phrase, public relations, is an invention of Edward Bernays. And so what Edward Bernays figured out was, how can I take all the psychology that my uncle Sigmund Freud taught me, and actually, instead of dealing with one person at a time, how can I take this psychology and learn how to get masses of people to believe the same thing? How can I manipulate the minds of people to get them all thinking what one small group of people wants everybody else to be thinking? How can I manipulate the minds of people to allow a small group of people to dictate the thoughts and the opinions of the masses? And so that's what he studied his life, and he studied his whole life, and he got very, very good at it. I don't want to go too deep into it. You can look him up. His name was Edward Bernays, but he had he wrote a book. He wrote several books, but his most famous book is called Propaganda. And this is just a real quick quote that he makes in his book called Propaganda. He says, "The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed," he says, "our minds are molded, our tastes are formed, our ideas are suggested, largely by men we've never heard of. This is the logical result of the way in which our democratic society is organized." He says, "Vast numbers of human beings must cooperate in this manner if they are to live together in a smoothly functioning society. In almost every act of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, in our social conduct or our ethical thinking," listen what he says. He says, "we are dominated by a relatively small number of persons who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they, this small group of people, who pull the wires which control the public mind. What Edward Bernays is saying, and his whole life, he worked for major companies. He worked for the cigarette companies. He worked for Procter and Gamble. He worked for the big oil companies. He worked directly for presidents. Throughout history, different presidents hired him to be their public relations person because he was a master at getting large, massive groups of people all to believe and accept the same thing. And so he actually invented something that is at work now, which is called social engineering. Social engineering is literally a science that you can study, just like Edward Bernays became the father of it, the master of it. You can go to school, and they call it marketing. They call it public relations, the phrase that he invented. But even he himself, Edward Bernays, came up with this other term called social engineering. And what social engineering does is to say, we want everybody to believe this. We want everybody to be on board with the same thing. And so in some cases of social engineering, it takes a long period of time. And they go through a methodical process of getting people to accept certain things. That's what happened with the LGBT movement. About 30 years ago, they literally started that process. They started using Edward Bernays' techniques to get all of American society to go from point A to where we were like, nah, we don't think that's a good thing. We don't think that's acceptable. We understand, that, some men like men and some women like women. We understand that, but we don't accept that as a normal, regular, acceptable part of society. We don't think it's really okay. And so they started the social engineering process, and they had goals set, and they said in 10 years, we want things to be like this. And we want people to be able to accept this. We want people to be able to accept Will and Grace without turning it off. We want people to be able to watch movies like Brokeback Mountain without turning it off. We just want to get to that point. And then another 5 years, we want to get to another point. And then another 5 years, we want to get to another point. And then at some point, we want to be able to have the Supreme Court validate what we are saying should be acceptable. And so we need to change the public opinion. We need to change the way people think. And that's called social engineering. But some social engineering jobs like that one take time. But there's other types of social engineering things that they want to do that needs to happen quickly. Something is going on, or we want to do something. An election is coming up, or we're on the brink of war, or it's something that needs to happen pretty soon, within the next months or within the next year. And we need to get everybody to fall in line with that. And so since it's a quick job, since it's something that has to happen quickly, in the United States, we have 330 million people. And so it's hard to control 330 million people real fast. So the technique that you use to get that many people to fall in line quickly is fear. When you make everybody afraid of something, people will be far more prone to just do what you say without asking too many questions. And that's exactly what I believe is going on with this COVID-19 virus. Again, I believe it's a virus. I believe it's real. I believe people are really getting sick. I believe people are really dying from it. I do not believe that the degree to which people are getting this virus and dying from this virus constitutes the necessity to be locked down to the degree that they have locked us down. And I believe that they have locked us down for a few reasons that I personally believe are wrong, and in some cases quite evil. This is what your brother thinks, your friend Ron, your brother Junior. This is what I believe. And you guys know I'm not a conspiracy theorist guy. I'm not, Michael Evans from Good Times, fight the man, fight the power. Y'all know that's not my MO. So I'm telling you this because this is really what I see. from a natural, logical, database-driven, personality, as well as what I sense in my spirit and what Tiff senses in her spirit as well. I think there's a couple of reasons for the lockdown. So this is part 2 of what I wanted to talk to you about. And, I'm going to try to keep it short. The reason why I'm doing this is because I kind of want to say all of this to all of you at the same time without having separate conversations. So we can kind of like, if you feel like you want to talk about it more, then text me up and then we can get on the phone and all that kind of stuff, because I have a lot more details that I could share. But one of the things that's happening right now with these stay-at-home orders is, as I speak, literally as I'm sitting here, people aren't paying attention because of everyone being focused on COVID-19. Everyone is focused on the fact that, unemployment is going through the roof. Our economy is literally tanking. I don't care if you like the president or you don't like the president. If our economy tanks, it's not about Donald Trump. It's about all of us. The economy tanking is bad. And even if you still have your job, like I still have my job, I praise God for it. We've been thanking God every morning. Our family prays together. I thank God every single morning that he's blessed me to be able to work from home. I'm working from home. I still have both my jobs. But to think that the direction that this economy is moving in is not going to eventually affect us all on some way, some shape, some level, then you're naive. And I pray that none of you are that naive to not understand how the economy interfaces with each of our personal lives. Don't have time for an economy lesson, but I think that y'all understand that. And also, I think if we stop and think about it, just our common sense will tell us that all of the effects of this lockdown really is going to lead to a whole lot more death than the coronavirus ever would on its own. Poverty causes death. There are people who had a job and said, I'm worried about my mom having the coronavirus because she's older and I'm concerned that she's going to get it and get sick and die. But there's also somebody else who says, you know what? I had my mother over here in nursing home A and they were treating her like crap and they weren't taking care of her and they weren't doing a good job with her and her health was deteriorating and she was going downhill fast. And then I got a better job and I was able to afford to put her in nursing home B. And in nursing home B, she's thriving, she's happy, she's doing well. But now I just lost my job because of the coronavirus, because we have to protect all of the other people's moms. But now my mom has to go back to nursing home A because I can't afford to keep her in nursing home B because I lost my job. So for every person that you're trying to say you're saving their life, then you're messing up somebody else's life or potentially causing somebody else to lose their life. So we got to put some common sense around this. And I'll just say this also just real quick, because stuff just irks me and irritates me. When I'm hearing a lot of the governors and a lot of the mayors are saying, we thought it was going to be 1 million people, but, now it looks like it's only going to be, 50 something thousand or 60 something thousand, maybe 70 something thousand at the most, at max. But we did the right thing, because if we just were able to save just, a few people's lives, then doing all this was worth it. Making all these people lose their jobs was worth it. Shutting down all these churches were worth it. And that's what I really going to start talking about. All this stuff was worth it. And so if it's worth it to try to save, 40,000 more lives, if we all get back in our cars and just start driving around again and start going to these different places again, then this many more people are going to die. And so here's my suggestion. My suggestion is, when I look at the data, I know that every single year, 40 to 50,000 people in the United States die in car accidents. So right now, while there's hardly anybody on the road, there's not that many cars on the road, then that means that we're saving those people's lives who would have died in car accidents, because so few of us are driving, and so few of us are going to work, and so few of us are going places, and we're driving a lot less. So we're saving a lot of people's lives. So if you really believe that, it's so important to save these lives, that then when they say, okay, you can start driving again, or you can start going back to work, or you can start going back to these places, let's not do that. Let's keep staying at home. Let's keep our businesses closed up. Let's stay in the unemployment line instead of getting jobs, because if we stay home and don't drive our cars, then we're saving 50,000 lives. But everybody knows you're going to get back in your car and start driving it again. Everybody knows that as soon as they say you can go back to work, you're going to go back to work. So why are trying to save 30 or 40 or 50,000 more coronavirus lives more important than saving car accident lives? It doesn't make sense to me. So the thing that I'm trying to get at is, with this lockdown, they are telling us that, and thank you all for just letting me talk to you, because I'm not trying to be eloquent. I'm just talking to my sisters and to my brothers and to my to other people in my life, church people. What they're saying is that there's certain things that are essential and certain things that are non-essential, right? And so I know you all been hearing that. This is essential. This is an essential business. This is not an essential business. And so what we're seeing across the United States, and in different states that, are really on these strong lockdowns, my state is included in that, they're saying certain things are essential, like being able to play your lottery numbers is essential. So when I drive down the street and I look over and I see the parking lot of 7-Eleven is still filled up, and I look through the glass and I could see 12, 13, 14 people in the 7-Eleven buying pop and cigarettes and standing in line to get their lottery numbers, that's fine, because that's essential, right? The liquor stores are open. And the reason why they say the liquor stores are open is because people who are addicted to alcohol cannot just all of a sudden have alcohol not available to them anymore, because they can have physical reactions to going to cold turkey and not being able to have alcohol, and then they're going to wind up in the hospital, and our hospitals they're going to be overrun with COVID-19 patients, so we can't afford to also have alcoholics who go into withdrawal symptoms in the hospital. So we need to leave the liquor stores open, even though the only places where they're having issues with hospitals just for a small period of time was in New York. Nowhere else in the entire country has had any issues with there's not enough room in the hospitals. So if you've been looking at some of these things that Donald Trump has been doing with these, part of it is informative, another part of it is ridiculous. But anyway, they built all these hospitals all around the United States, all these makeshift hospitals. They're empty. Nobody's using them. They built all these ventilators. We need ventilators. Nobody's using them. Because this was the Black Plague. It was going to destroy everybody. We need 5 million ventilators. We need to build new hospitals. We need all these hospital beds. And all these hospital beds are sitting there empty. And nobody's using these ventilators. And so we have to leave the liquor stores open, because the hospitals are going to be so jam-packed that now we can't have the alcoholics in here, whose bodies are going into physical withdrawal because they can't drink. So we need to leave the liquor store open. Some of the states where they sell marijuana, where marijuana is legal, all the marijuana stores are open. So you can go and you can buy your weed. You can go to the liquor store. You can buy your liquor. You can go to the lottery and play your lottery. All that stuff is essential, they're telling you. But what they're saying is non-essential. They're saying what is non-essential is Hebrews chapter 10, verses 24 and 25, which says, let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. How many of us, because I'm among them, I'm one of the people, but I cannot tell you how many testimonies, including my own testimony, over the years, just being a Christian brother, being in ministry, how many people who have come into the church with this testimony, who have said, you know what, I started coming to Wednesday night Bible study, and I was out there doing whatever. I was doing X, Y, and Z. I was hooked on drugs. I was getting drunk every night. I was with a bunch of women I weren't supposed to be with. I was with men I wasn't supposed to be with. I was hooked on pornography. I was smoking weed night after night. I was doing all this stuff, but it's been since I've been able to come into the church. And when I come here, I find strength. When I walk into this place and I am numbered among the company of those who are seeking God's face, it does something for me. And so, that brother or that sister, they've been coming to church for the past 5 months, for the past 8 months, for the past year and a half. And that's their testimony. And they are saying, when I come here, I find strength here. That's why I've been clean for a year. When I come here and I see mother so-and-so, and she puts her arms around me and gives me a kiss on the cheek and says, I've been praying for you, baby. I've been lifting you up. The strength that you get when you come together, when we come together. Hebrews 10 is saying, let's consider each other to stir each other up. And I'm just telling y'all, I know that we've been having meetings on Skype, and we've been having phone conferences, and we've been having Zoom meetings. But anybody who's listening to this, if you're my sisters or my brother-in-law, if you're listening to this, if it's Pastor Roger, if it's my buddy Lester, whoever it might be, all of us have been saved long enough to know, and I don't have to go through this for a long period of time. I'm just challenging all of us that we all know that there's a difference between 20 people getting on a Skype meeting and having prayer and 20 people all walking into the same sanctuary, lifting up our hands to God and calling upon his name. We know that there's a difference. To say this is what we're being told as the church. We're being told that the pizza delivery man's job is essential. And I'm not saying his job is not essential. I'm not talking about whether he should be essential or not. But we're being told that the pizza delivery man's job is essential, but the praise leader's job is not essential. We're being told that the ushers are not essential. We're being told that people like my daughter, who are called and sanctified and anointed praise dancer, she's not essential. Her ministry is not that important. The pizza guy is important. The liquor store guy is important. The lottery guy punching up the lottery numbers is important. The weed man is important. But your ministry is not. Your ministry is non-essential. So we're concerned about the alcoholic who we don't want him to go into withdrawal. So let's make sure he can still go buy his Jack Daniels. That's essential. But the brother who has been off of alcohol for the past 4 years, but he gets so much strength from going to his AA meetings, and he gets so much strength from coming to the men's fellowship, and he gets so much strength from coming to Bible study, and he doesn't want to drink alcohol. But he's not able to get that strength. He's not able to get that ministry. He's not able to have somebody touch and agree with him and put his arms around him. And I'm just being real with y'all. We know that it's all true. Some people don't want the Skype meeting. And so they're going to get lost. There's some people that's what they need. I have students at my school that I'm doing these online meetings. I'm doing Google meetings, and I'm only getting a handful of students that still are doing their schoolwork and still meeting with me because they don't want to do it on Google. They need to be in the classroom. They need for Mr. Broom to walk by and I put my hand on their shoulder and I say, "What's up, man? What you doing? How you doing? Let's get this work done. Mr. Broom, I got a question. Let me show you how to do it, man." But they're not doing it on Skype. It's not the same, y'all. Y'all know it's not the same. You know it's not the same. But we're sitting back and just saying, this is cool. Let the government tell us that we're not essential. When we have been saying our whole lives that what we do, when we come into the house of God, and even when we leave the house of God and go and minister and take the gospel to the world, that what we do as people of God, what we do as men and women of God is the most important. It is the most essential thing that's being done on this planet. But we're just sitting by and letting the mayor tell us and letting the governor tell us that what we do in terms of coming into the house of the Lord is non-essential. And I think the reason why we're letting that happen is because we ourselves are afraid. And we've given into this technique of control through fear. Because it's a lot of people rising up now. It's a lot of people who are thinking the way that me and Tiff were thinking, like right off the bat. Like, this is not what's actually going on is not, I'm not saying it's not serious. And I'm not saying that these protesters don't think that the virus is serious, but they're saying what I'm seeing when I'm looking with my eyes, I don't see something serious enough to be making me go out of business when I've been working 10 years to get this business to where it is. And I'm about to go out of business. I don't see 1 million people dead that makes me go, oh yeah, we got to do this. I don't see it. And so they're standing up and you're getting all of these protest rallies around the United States now with people saying, this is stupid. This is not right. You got all of us shut down. My kids are not getting educated. And I don't see enough evidence. I don't see enough data to warrant shutting things down to this degree. And I'm tired of it. And we're fed up. And now you're seeing all of these protests. I just saw today, Michaela showed me on her phone, all these people, it got really, really hot in California. It's starting to warm up, especially in the warm states. It got really hot and people in California said, forget this. And so it's just thousands of people just went to the beach. They're like, arrest us all because we're going to the beach. We're tired of being in the house. It's 98 degrees. We're going to the beach. Come get us. This is stupid. If we saw everybody just dropping dead, yeah, we get it. But we don't see that. So we're going to the beach. And the same thing happened over here in North Carolina. All these people went to the beach out in Wilmington. It wasn't as many as California, but it was like hundreds of people. They just went to the beach. Like, you're going to try to keep us in forever? And now what they're saying is, if you're following the different states, I'm not even talking about the news. I'm talking about going to different states' websites and going directly to the data, because the news media is just an arm of these people that I told you that Bernays is talking about. Bernays says there's just a group of people, and he's saying, I've worked for those people. I have been one of the main people who has helped them to understand how to get all of y'all to believe what they want y'all to believe. So I know how this works because I'm the guy that they hired to make that happen. And if you read more of his writings and more of his works, he'll teach you and he'll say the media They're just another arm of that. The job of the media, the job of CNN and MSNBC and Fox News and the newspapers and the magazines, their job is not to give you information. Their job is to try to get you to believe what they want you to believe about the so-called information that they give you. They're not trying to give you information. They're trying to formulate and form your opinions. They are just another arm, another tentacle of the process of social engineering. So I'm not talking about going to these places for most of your information. You can get some information from them as long as you are discerning enough to separate the information from the brainwashing. So I get information from them, but I don't listen to what they're trying to tell me to think about the information. But I also get a lot of information directly from informational sources. So if you go to the different states' websites, a lot of states now are saying, for instance, our personal state here in North Carolina, they're saying, first they said, oh, okay, we're going to go with all this stuff through April 15th. Oh, now it's going to be April 30th. Oh, now it's going to be May 8th. And if we do May 8th, then it's only these certain little things that you can do. There's still no church. We might think about opening up the churches on, sometime after that. We don't know yet. We need to see how it goes. And a lot of states are doing that. And I'm getting to the point where as a man of God and as a minister, and me recognizing the role of the church in the world, we're supposed to be doing more. Just our job description cannot be fulfilled on Skype. I'm just going to put it like that. The role of the church cannot be carried out on Zoom. The role of the church in this world cannot be fully carried out on conference calls. And we are allowing the mayor and the governor and all these different political entities to tell the church that we are non-essential. And we're letting them do it because they got us scared. They have us scared that we're going to get sick and die. Where if you look at the data, y'all, I'm a data man. I'm sorry, that's the way I think. If you look at the data, you have a way higher possibility of dying in a car accident when you start driving again than you have of getting the coronavirus, getting on a respirator, can't breathe, and end up dying. It's a way higher possibility of you dying in a car accident. It's a higher possibility that for you to choke on a piece of meat and die. So in order to save lives, we want to save the lives of all the people who might choke on meat. So we're going to have a new government order that says everybody needs to eat pudding and everybody needs to eat applesauce to make sure that we don't lose anybody through choking. You would say that's ridiculous. I'm not going to do that. But that's what you're doing now. So even if you don't see the coronavirus the same way that we do, that's fine. I respect you. I'm just giving you my deep opinion and my thought. But I do pray that you would really think about and that you would really pray about the response of the church and all this, because it's breaking my heart. It's really, really grieving me that I'm looking at business people who are standing up and saying, I'm not going to let y'all destroy my business. But we don't have enough pastors standing up and saying, I'm not going to let y'all keep me from taking care of my flock. I got people who need me. I've got people who need more from me than what I can give them through Skype. I've got people who need more from me than what, and so we're literally telling a whole bunch of people that they're non-essential. My daughter Michaela was just she's so upset because she's like, God, Daddy, God called me to dance. She's telling me and Tiff, God called me to dance, and I don't have an audience. Like, what's my purpose? We're literally allowing people to stifle our purposes and tell us that our purpose is non-essential. And we're just sitting there and just taking it. And so I'm just saying, I'm tired of it, y'all. I want y'all to pray about it. What our family is going to do in response to this on May 7th is the National Day of Prayer. Our family has acknowledged the National Day of Prayer for years, all the way, like for years and years since the kids have been little, all the way back when we lived in Cleveland. Every year on the National Day of Prayer is usually in May. It's always on a Thursday in May, where it's the National Day of Prayer. And we're not sure, but the governor of our state, Roy Cooper, he's a very liberal man. We don't perceive that he cares very much for the church and for what the church stands for. There's a lot of things that he is for that we are against, but he's talking about opening up the government a little bit on May 8th, which is a day after the National Day of Prayer. So, you know, it's possible that he might be saying May 8th just to make sure that the people in North Carolina, a lot of, you know, Christians down here, religious people who honor the National Day of Prayer, and we do something for the National Day of Prayer. And he's not going to allow the state to open up until the day after the National Day of Prayer is over. So what our family is going to do is we are going to acknowledge the National Day of Prayer. Michaela and her praise dance group that she dances with, called the Seeds of Praise. The Seeds of Praise are coming to our house. They're going to dance in the front yard. We're going to play music in the front yard. They're going to dance 6 feet apart because we're not trying to be openly rebellious directly against the authorities, but they're going to be 6 feet apart. And I'm going to pray in the front yard, and we're going to have prayer. And we're going to dance. Michaela and her dance group, we're going to dance. We're going to have praise and worship. And whoever wants to come to our home can come. You just stay 6 feet apart. But we're tired of being stifled, and we're tired of being told that what we do is non-essential. I pray that y'all would not, I don't know what's going on with all of y'all. I don't know exactly what, you know, some of you are doing for church. I don't know, Elle and Fred, what World Harvest is doing with church. But I just really would like for you all to join me in prayer that God would give us wisdom and that we would have a spirit not of rebellion against the government, because Romans chapter 13 does tell us to respect and honor the authorities that God has put in place in terms of the secular government. However, there is a place not necessarily for, direct disobedience to the government, but there is a time and a place to lift your voice up to the government and say, this is wrong. There is a time and a place to say to the government, hey, government, this is not right for the liquor store to be open and be packed with 13 people in there buying booze. It's not right for the 7-Eleven to be packed with 18 people in there playing the lottery. It's not right for these 9 people to be packed into the weed store buying weed, but you won't allow us to go into our church building and minister to one another. That's not right. And I just pray that we as the church would recognize how essential we are and get back to work and stop being scared. I'm just saying to you that I do not believe that you're going to die from the coronavirus. I don't. I'm not saying it's not real. I'm not saying people haven't died. I just don't believe that you're going to die from the coronavirus. And I also believe that the coronavirus is far more widespread than what anybody's known. And a lot of us may have already had it already. Had our little cough, had our little diarrhea in the toilet or whatever. I don't know. I haven't really gotten sick, but a lot of people have already had it, recovered, and moved on. And you're still here. And no more people have died from this than who dies from the flu every year. And that's sad. I don't like to see people die. I don't want people to die. If it wasn't coronavirus and it was just the regular flu, and somebody told me, hey, my uncle, he got the flu real bad this year, ended up getting pneumonia and passed away, I'd be so sad. I'd be so sorry. I would be praying for their family, asking God to bless them and help them through their grief and sorrow. I would ask and say, was your uncle saved? And they tell me yes or no. And I would just be sad. It wouldn't matter that he died from the coronavirus or just from the regular flu. It wouldn't matter. But I do know that every last single year, 45,000 people, sometimes it's a little bit less than that, sometimes it's more. And 2018 was a really bad flu year. 2018, 83,000 people died from the flu. 83,000. So with the coronavirus right now, we're at 53 or 54,000 people who have died. And that's only a little bit over the regular average flu season. And so if you weren't worried about the flu last year, if you weren't worried about the flu in 2019, you weren't worried about the flu in 2018 when 83,000 people died, and you weren't worried about the flu then, you were going to church, you were ministering to people, you were laying hands on people, we were touching, agreeing with one another. We were putting our arms around one another. We were telling Sister so-and-so, I miss you so much. I haven't seen you in so long. And the sisters giving each other kisses on the cheek and saying, I miss you. I'm praying for you. That matters. That actually impacts people's lives and helps them. And if you weren't worried about it last year or the year before that or the year before that, I'm telling you as a data person, you don't have any reason to be any more worried about it right now than what you did last year. So I pray that I haven't been wearing no mask. If you've been wearing a mask, take your mask off and go back to church and open up your mouth so people can see what you're saying. I have a hearing problem. So if we get back to church and they say everybody's got to wear a mask, I ain't gonna understand what you're saying anyway, because I don't know sign language and I read lips a little bit to help me understand what people are saying. So if we all go back to church and the government tells us you can go back to church, but now it's only 10 people allowed to be inside the church at a time and you all got to wear a mask. Come on, y'all. The game, as far as the brooms are concerned, the game is up and we got things to do. And, if the church ain't open, then we're going to have church here in the front yard. All right. That's what I have to say about everything. And we love you. I'm also attaching a link to another video that I hope maybe you'll check out and want to look at. It just has to do with how the powers that be know how to control the masses through fear. And it's a really interesting video. And again, I didn't watch this video and then that's what made me believe it. I found this video because I already believed this and I already understood this to be true. And then I ended up finding a video to maybe help you understand a little bit more what I'm talking about. All right. I do love y'all. Somebody can text me back. Somebody can call me up and we can talk about this more at length. But I just kind of wanted to say this to all of you at the same time so I didn't have to necessarily repeat it. But we can have some separate conversations. I love you. My sisters, I love y'all. Fred, I love you. Any of my nieces and nephews who end up listening to this, I love y'all. Big Les, I love you. Pastor Roger, Sister Tay, I love y'all. And so that's who I was talking to. Over and out. Broom out.